As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICANN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized SEMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a SEMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICANN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the SEMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the SEMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Good evening, our fellow professional colleagues, student members, and friends of the Institute, and welcome to another episode of ICANN on Air, your great platform for learning, powered by our noble institute, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I'm your host for today, Tosin Akinwumi, FCA, and I will say Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim faithfuls. May we have more Eid to celebrate while online. And as we enjoy the blessings received in Ramadan, let us also consistently reflect on the spiritual renewal it brings and the self-discipline, empathy, and compassion that it teaches. And that is the message of the 59th ICANN President on the celebration of Eid Mubarak. It's your program, ICANN on Air, again today. And please inform your colleagues and friends that the show has started. And you can be part of this show on ICANN social media handles, on our Facebook page, on ICANN YouTube channel. And today, Thursday, 11th April 2024, we are considering another topic today, surviving the current cost of living crisis. And I have here with me a distinguished professional, the chairman of AIA Professional Services and the immediate past president of CITN, Chartered Institute of Nigeria, in person of Mr. Adesina Adedayo, MNI FCA, the oracle himself. And today we shall be looking at that topic once again, surviving the current cost of living crisis. Don't go away. Stay tuned. I'll be right back shortly with my guest in the studio. Thank you.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICANN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized SEMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a SEMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICANN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the SEMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the SEMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
All right, you are welcome back to the studio. And today, like I told you, we are looking at the topic, surviving the current cost of living crisis. And I have here with me a distinguished professional, the oracle himself, the immediate past president of CITN, in person of Mr. Adesina Adedayo, MNI FCA. It is a pleasure to have you on the show today, sir. All right, let me quickly take their brief
Yeah,
profile.
thank you for having me. I think it's clear now.
Okay, I can hear you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly take the brief profile of Mr. Deshino Adedayo. Although he's an albino in the market, he's widely known, but for those who, or for people to know him better, he is the first CITN sponsored participant to the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, KURU, in 2021, and he got the award of member of the National Institute, MNI, in 2021. Mr. Adeshino Adedayo is a fellow of ICANN, having qualified in 1992, fellow of CITN, member, Business Recovery and Insolvency Practitioners of Nigeria, associate, Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, associate member, Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers of Nigeria. For his institutional leadership role, he was the 15th president and chairman of council, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, from June 2021 to June 2023, and also the second vice president of the West African Union of Tax Institutes on behalf of Nigeria in 2023. Of course, the list is a whole lot when you talk of the Oracle himself. But because of time, we'll quickly go to the business of the day. Our distinguished professionals, like we usually say, ICANN on Air is your program, and you can bring your wares so that we can advertise your wares, your programs, your products on this program. This program affords professionals and business owners to showcase their goods and services at affordable rates. The reach of this program is global, and once again, I assure you that you won't regret the patronage. So quickly, let's go to the topic as I take Mr. Adeshino Adedayo on the topic, surviving the current cost of living crisis. Sir, the survival and quality of an individual, a corporate body, or a nation is dependent on a lot of factors. And having you as our guest on the show today will grant our global viewers the opportunity to learn and share from your depth of intellectual knowledge, skills, and experiences. So, eking out a living appears to be getting tougher by the day in Nigeria as a country. Is it just a perception, or is it real? And what could be the reason?
It is the reality. I have to tell you, it is the reality because I've spent my entire life in this country. And I can tell you it's always been challenging, but it is becoming more challenging as a result of what we are going through presently. And for a professional, the challenges require us to actually start looking at ways to talk about so many things that borders on cost management and innovative thinking. I can tell you it is a reality. It is not just a perception.
Wow. So if it is a reality, then what exactly is the reason? What is the cause of the tough situation, of the hard situation we are facing when it comes to the cost of living crisis?
Now, for me to put it in perspective, I can tell you that as far back as 2002, I was in Deloitte and I was on 1.5 million per annum. And that 1.5 million naira per annum equates to exactly $11,000. Now, if you talk about $11,000 in the current position we are talking about, is something around 30 million. So when you look at that and you are now trying to see so many things have risen in the course of time, but the payroll structure has not been able to match up with the reality of that time. But to worsen it off, the things we consider necessity are becoming more and more expensive to acquire. So where do you start thinking about other things that borders on even luxury or even things that borders on capital development? The thinking faculty of an average professional is focused more on survival rather than creativity. That is the challenge you are facing now.
Wow, wow, wow. The thinking faculty of an average professional. Okay, so we have seen in these countries that government upon government continue to bring in reforms. And those reforms are targeted towards cushioning the economic pains of the citizens and to also create opportunities for growth and development. But in the past few decades, the Nigerian economy seems to be progressing backward. What could be the reason for this, despite the economic reforms targeted towards resolving the issues we have?
You see, the major issue is for us to address issues from the root. Because without us addressing certain things that borders on productivity, all what we are doing is just focusing on things that does not really matter or that does not add value to the bottom line. Now, what are these things? I can assure you, as somebody who has lived in Lagos my entire life, there used to be a period when you go to some other areas, they are called industrial areas. What has happened to those industrial areas? When you now look at other contexts in terms of what is happening in terms of drain out, we are focusing on things that are not adding value to the bottom line effectively. In addition to that, our population is growing. 60 years ago, we are something around 50 million plus. As of today, we are talking about 200 something million. In the next 45 years, we are getting close to something around 500 million. So what are we talking about? The challenges are growing, and the economic addressing this issue is not actually making progress. So technically, if you have to put it in figurative terms, it's like we are not making any progress, because a progress is determined by how well your people are able to afford things that are considered basic. And we are even talking about multidimensional poverty. It's a serious matter.
I can't but agree with you. I can't but agree with you on that last sentence you just made in answering that question. Okay, so still on that question, sir, still on the question of the various reforms being made by government over government. So in trying to fix a national economy, concepts and strategies such as recapitalization, restructuring, reconstruction, recalibration, etc., might be necessary depending on how wounded or how derailed an economy is. In your own opinion, sir, how sick or how derailed or how wounded is Nigerian economy as of today?
Well, I'm trying as much as possible, because as a professional accountant, a chartered accountant, I operate on the basis of evidence. And the truth of the matter is that even looking at circumstantial evidence as we have it today, the economy is sick. We have to feel that fact. Now, using a simple analytical review in terms of data analytics, diagnostic, and all the rest, the fact of the matter is that how do we determine the level of ailment, the intensive care units we need to put the economy, if we do not have data at our fingertips? So if that will be the case, then the next question we should ask ourselves is that, just looking at our population, estimated population as of today, and the multidimensional poverty, it means we need to actually change strategy in order to address this. We cannot throw money at poverty. Poverty is an affliction of the mind. It destroys the thinking process, and that becomes a challenge. So we need to actually look for a different strategy to make sure that we move our people out of poverty. It is a very fundamental problem.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so I'm sure gradually we are taking the questions so that we can go now deep into the topic for today, which is on surviving the current cost of living crisis. Of course, the current cost of living is so high that people are crying, professionals, non-professionals, and all that. So it's been opined that the current cost of living crisis has left Nigerians with no option other than to be using substandard goods. And that has ultimately reduced Nigeria to a country flooded with substandard goods. What's your personal opinion about this, sir?
My personal opinion is that at the regulatory and government level, there is a need to actually focus. If we are talking about quality of life, if we are constrained to a level where we are using substandard goods, it means technically our quality of life is going down. And I can tell you that even as far back as those days when I was at primary school level, we were using cortina shoes, and it lasts for so long. Now, if you are using substandard good, it means our level of operating costs, we are focusing so much on operational survival. It's like you use it this year, it gets spoiled so fast, and then the next thing is what happens next. So government needs to do a lot in this regard. Now, secondly, as individuals, we should be focused on what is adding value, because this thing has a perception and it operates on our psyche. If you get used to substandard quality way of living, then you are going to start thinking substandard. So at that point, I think there is high time we should focus on things that are made in Nigeria, made for Nigeria, and thereafter focus on ability to add value to our lives. It is important. We shouldn't be controlled by every time the dollar sneezes, Naira catches cold. That shouldn't be the way we should live our life.
Thank you very much, sir. The government should focus on ability to add value to our lives. That's a good one there. Well done, sir. Of course, we know you as the Oracle, and we actually know why we had to bring you on this show, because you are the man that can actually talk and speak to this topic, and that's why we have actually invited you. Thank you once again, sir. And now, moving along on this part, the federal government, the state governments, and local governments are trying to see what they could do possibly to help the citizenry. So we hear cases of food distributions. People are distributing food here. Foods are being sold at cheaper prices in this market and all that. And in that part, we are also witnesses to the unfortunate deaths that have occurred at food distribution events or centers at recent times. Would it be right to say that Nigerians have been pushed to the edge? What do this food distribution arrangement also say about the government's creativity in solving this problem that we have in our hands?
Let me say first and foremost, I'm not a believer in throwing money at poverty. Because the truth of the matter is that if you give me food to eat today, I will still be hungry tomorrow. So that is first and foremost, and that's my stand as far as that is concerned. Now, talking from the palliative angle, I agree, we have multidimensional poverty. Some people can just have enough to feed for a week or two as a result of the palliative we are talking about. But thereafter, what happened? What happened next? Now, the next question we should be talking about, look, when we say poverty is an affliction of the mind, then we cannot be talking about throwing money at that affliction. We should be talking about curing it. So in my opinion, the way it is being presently addressed does not help in the long run. It can be a short-term issue, but even at the level of short-term, look at the money amount, the amount spent on it. If this amount can be used for something more creative, like an industrial zone, and start looking at the sixth geopolitical zone, we may be able to make better impact in the long run than looking about trade billions and billions and billions against issue of just making people find something to eat and drink. We will eventually sell off our birthright. And that is not what Nigeria represents in Africa. We should think outside of the box relating to things like this, not throw money at poverty.
Thinking outside of the box is the next thing to do, like you mentioned. Okay, still talking about the hardship being faced, about the current cost of living. We all know the saying that a hungry man is an angry man. And as a consummate professional and the alumnus of the National Institute that you are, how would you say this cost of living crisis has impacted our behaviors, our values as citizens and as a nation? Are we still the same friendly and caring Nigerians that we have always been?
Let me say something. I think our current, while we are still waiting for the NLC being able to negotiate a better minimum wage for us, we are talking 30,000 naira. And I'll give a simple example if the moderator permits me. You have a staff who is on 30,000 naira. And this staff is supposed to rent a one room, just one room, not any distance. And the one room in Lagos today costs something close to 12,500 per month. You talk about transport costs. Transport costs for somebody living in the Kotrebe, for example, to come to a place like Maryland, where I have, will cost about 1,000 naira. Technically, that's about 22,000 naira in a month. Add that plus the 12,500. And then you had another thing that borders on the person taking just lunch. Because while you are to work, you can't go home to go and eat. So you take lunch and the lunch costs about 1,000 naira. That's another 22. So technically, when you add all this up, you are getting something close to 78,500. And you are paying him 30,000 naira. Then the next question is, how do you want him to survive? Because except if the parents are now subsidizing is working for you, it is clear that the take-home pay is not taking him home. So that is number one, at that basic level of minimum wage. So now talk about somebody like who is a professional, because when you are talking about cost of living is based on the expected standard of living for a chartered accountant, for example. And if you expect a certain standard of living for a chartered accountant and a lot of things are going haywire, then the question is now, at the end of the day, some other things are called spiritual attack. They are not. They're actually something that borders on the fact that economy impacts on your spiritual outlook. If you start looking at it, you start going through depression, start going through so many things. You are monitoring so many health-related problems. But the health-related problems fundamentally have something to do with the dangerous economic position we are finding ourselves. So it's not psychologically good for us as individuals. And we are talking about creativity and the way forward. How many people, for example, want to admire the way we live? So these are all things that we need to start looking. So how do you sustain this? That becomes a question I may just take at the one go. In sustaining this, you need to start looking at what constitutes essentials, number one. That's very important. Because when you focus on what constitutes essential, then you start talking about, because we are chartered accountants, our primary job is actually turning things around. And if you cannot turn your own circumstances around or find the ability to cope with it, then we are not actually living up true to our title and reputation. So you must look at it and cut off all what is considered non-essential and focus on the thing that is considered essential. Because the truth of the matter is that you cannot will away what has happened to the naira. You cannot will away what has happened to the issue of fuel. You cannot will away so many of these things. So you have to find a way of coping while looking for ways of expanding your income legitimately, if you ask me, rather than talking about things that borders on what will put your family into disrepute. That's my immediate suggestion, while I will take the others as time goes on.
Thank you very much, sir. We professionals should focus on essentials, even in these tough times. I think that's a summary of your response to that question. Okay, so let's now move to that part of the professionals. As a Nigerian and a business coach that you are, sir, I want to give us your own fair and objective assessment of the efforts of Nigerian professionals, especially chartered accountants, who are the audience of this program, to confront the current business survival challenges and while still providing credible services to their clientele.
How do you confront current and future challenges and at the same time provide quality service? Let me make something very clear. And I think I can say that from two perspectives. First, I work with one of the largest accounting firms in this country, which is Deloitte, for 9 years. And I've been either medium or small size practitioner for the last 22 years. So I know what it means to be in the big firm, and I know what it means to be a small practicing firm. Now, having said that, let me put it this way. You see, the issue of providing quality service is not negotiable, because the truth of the matter, it is a brand reputation. Virtually people will address you by virtue of the quality of service you render. That is one area. Irrespective of how terrible or how bad it is, that is something that has to do with the fact that if you don't do it, people will put something and say, it was a chartered accountant like you that did this job for me. So quality service is the right thing to do. Now talk about how do you survive. And I can tell you in some cases, I know so many accounting firms that their staff only come like twice or thrice in a month. In a week. So if they come like that, it has to do with the fact that they cannot afford to pay competitive salary. So that is one. Then the second part is the fact that you as a person, you should start looking at what constitutes slack. If you start getting to a level, you start talking about cutting costs. But one of the things we normally say when it comes to cost management, you should only cut the flesh, don't cut the bone. It becomes very dangerous when you start cutting the bone. So those are areas where you start looking at creative ways. And thank God for things that borders on things like zone. Your level of fuel consumption and other things can be managed within a certain reasonable level. So all these are areas where we need to look, because the truth of the matter, like I said, is that one, this is not a how-to manual. It's why you must do it. Because if it is how to, our circumstances differ one from the other. So it is why you need to do it. Because if you do not survive to see tomorrow, then what if tomorrow comes? So these are all areas where we must actually focus on essential and try to make sure we live long enough to see the tomorrow of our dream.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Let's move back to the government now and consider this topic also from their hands. Like you said at the beginning of this program, that you're a full-fledged Nigerian having lived in the country all your life. With your deep and practical knowledge of the Nigerian economy, I also want you to give us your fair and unbiased assessment of the Nigerian economic policies, especially in the areas that relates to access to individual investors, SMEs, and corporate organizations. How are these policies of government being favorably disposed to these sectors?
Let me say something. What I consider the most important policy direction, especially as it affects business, has to do with trade policy, monetary policy, and tax and fiscal policies. Now, these three has direct impact. Any sensitivity on one affects the issue of the outlook. So that brings us to what are we doing as a country? And that is the question you asked me. We're having the issue of African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We're having the issue of ECOWAS protocol. You're having so many things that borders on even monetary policy that seems as if we are trying to see what is the best way forward. And added to that is the fact that we have just increased the capital expectation, which we are going to talk about in terms of the next 2 years and the impact will be seen. There is a consequence for every decision or indecision, if you ask me. So all this effectively impacts on the people. And now for government, what I will say is this: look at the consequence of some of these things and realize that you are talking about multidimensional poverty. Anything that complicates our existing multidimensional poverty further makes a lot of us who even think we are above the poverty line. Because the truth of the matter is that if you think you're above the poverty line, one or two things happens, and then you find yourself sensitized. Find yourself on the other side, because we are no longer have a viral middle class. The current middle class is technically dead, if you ask me. You're either there or here. And if you are still struggling at the other level, a little sensitivity, 6 months is all it takes to put a lot of us in deeper trouble. We need to start looking at bringing the middle class back, and then thereafter we can now start addressing a lot of issues. We need to start addressing that, and it is a deliberate issue, because we must be intentional about the fact that without the middle class, we don't have an economy. We don't, because the rich can be getting richer, but when the poor start getting poorer, it is a dangerous dilemma.
Thank you very much, sir. We need to be intentional about bringing back the middle class, as we do not have them again. It's been a wonderful session with our guest on the show today, Mr. Deshino Adedayo, MNI FCA, who is the chairman of AIA Professional Services and also the immediate past president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. And we have been talking on the topic, surviving the current cost of living crisis. Already, I'm seeing questions from the audience. Keep on sending in your questions. Certainly, my guest is on the seat and he will do justice to your questions. Let's quickly go on, run some commercials. We'll be right back to continue the show. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICANN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICANN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Welcome back to ICANN on Air. And if you are just joining us, of course, today we have been talking about the topic, surviving the current cost of living crisis. Everybody is shouting the cost of living is so high, regardless of where you live in the country. We have been shouting the cost of food items, cost of rent, cost of transportation, power, cost, other costs. They've all been so on the high side. And today, our guest on the show, in person of Mr. Deshino Adedayo, MNIFCA, has been speaking to that topic. Like I said, continue to send in your questions, and certainly we will take your questions. But quickly, let me quickly recognize our audience who joined us on the show today. I can see Funsho Ayinoluwa, Taufik Lawal from Abeokuta, Fagbola Temitope Adeniyi, all the way from Ibadan. I also have Olusegun Onabanjo from Canada District, Toyosi Abayomi from Agege, Lagos, Shosan Olusoji from Abeokuta in Ogun State, Lydia Tolulope Adenaike from Ijebu-Ode, Ogun State, John Uwa from in Anambra State. We have Awe Lawrence from Ibadan. We have Chibuzo Okorie, Abido Yoderinde, Kayode Steven from Oyo and this Society of ICANN. We have Olabi Musiba from Kaduna. We have Niyola Jide streaming live from Songwater. We have lots of people who have joined us on this show today. Please send in your questions. I'm already seeing some questions, and I assure you, at the appropriate time, of course, the Oracle himself is on the seat, and he will do justice to your question. So let's speak it from where we stop, Mr. Adeshino. And my next question is now on taxation. I don't know if I should ask you a question on taxation, because everybody who knows you knows so well that you are a guru when it comes to taxation as a course. But we need to go, since we are still talking on surviving the current cost of living crisis. As a tax expert and the immediate past president of CITN, how true is the assertion by some concerned Nigerian citizens that the Finance Act is heartlessly geared towards punishing them through the imposition of multiple taxes, despite the erosion of their disposable incomes by the continuous rising of inflation figures?
Let me say something. Okay, I said, let me say something. Tax is a local issue. And the truth of the matter is that whenever you are talking about crafting policy, you should also be mindful of your environment. Because what makes tax is the law, the administration, and the policy. So when we agree that, okay, you have a law, quite all right. The question is, does your law consider the circumstances of your own people? Then the administrative aspect, you look at it because they are talking about fiscal federalism and all the rest. So the question is, how do we administer this law? Because it's not sufficient for one state to be very efficient with tax administration and the other state lagging behind. Then the final one is the policy direction. And from what I can deduce from what you just said, that has to do with policy vis-a-vis our people. That should be the emphasis there. So policy vis-a-vis our people. Now, let me say something again. I remember when Lagos started talking about improvement in administration, a lot of people, I'm a practitioner, a lot of people were not paying taxes as I went due. We're coming on their own to say we want to now fulfill our civic responsibility. We can see what is happening. So there is the aspect of performance, there is the aspect of accountability. Now, to simplify a lot of things vis-a-vis our educational system on the tax level, we had a tax policy crafted some years ago. And then the next question is, how implementable is it? Because you see, no matter how good it is, if it does not address the people's perception, then we have a challenge. So, and if you now ask me back to just your question, straight and direct now, it is a question of we need to look at our tax system and make sure that what we are taxing, and I think Oyedele made mention of that, the current state, we shouldn't be taxing poverty. We should not be taxing poverty. Because when people are already poor and you are putting them, you should not have a benchmark, a reasonable benchmark that would make people realize that, look, beyond this level, the government is supporting you to grow. When you get to that level, when you have your head above the water, then we can now tax you effectively. Because if your head is below the water and we are putting heavy load on you again, you are going to drown. It's as simple as that. So the tax system needs to be also rejigged in order to address that. And I believe the current committee may be able to address that by the time their findings are made public.
Tax system needs to be rejigged in order to address the issues in the society. I can't agree less with you. That's a good one. But still talking on tax, and you just mentioned it too while you are responding to my last question. It's about the tax revenue deployment. Now, while tax is globally considered as one of the key sources of government revenue, and its payment is a civic responsibility, just like you also alluded, taxes revenue deployment is constantly being challenged, condemned, and attacked by both individuals and corporate citizens, especially in Nigeria. What is your position on tax revenue deployment in Nigeria?
My position, you see, there is something about being a chartered accountant. It's called the consistency concept. My position is consistent because it is based on principle. And it has to do with the three things I mentioned when I was assuming presidency. It is about GAP. When you talk about revenue generation, which is the tax aspect and others, there is need to talk about the accountability. Accountability is the A part. The A part of accountability is critical. And from the perspective of I've seen in this country, the level of accountability needs to be improved on. Then finally, the productive deployment of this revenue should be done in such a way that the people will have that understanding that this money that came from you has been used in such a way that is beneficial to your interests. We need to actually work on that. Now, as a chartered accountant, I will say that, look, there's a need to us to continuously engage with the government to ensure that this issue of accountability is not joked with. You don't joke with such things. Accountability is what makes us chartered accountants. And the truth of the matter, we must stand for it and be effectively be seen to be on the side of accountability. That is very important.
Accountability is what makes us chartered accountants. Wow, I took that line straight and it sinks. Thank you very much, sir, for that response. Now, moving along this path, I want us to be very basic and practical now. The Nigerian official monthly minimum wage, as at today, is 30,000 naira. And that sum cannot buy a 50 kg bag of rice, nor a 50-liter jerry can of petrol. Inflation is fast rising and is halting. How can citizens survive without resorting to shady or corrupt deals?
Thank you very much. You are just talking about the bag of rice. What about the issue of bread? In my area, bread is going for like 1,700. Then the question you should be asking is how many bread do I have in my salary? And when you consider things like this, you realize that the fact of the matter remains. I did a simple illustration talking about just feeding in the afternoon, transport to work, and then the a one-room accommodation, not one room self-contained, not one room mini flat, one room with the conveniences and others in the public place. Now, and we arrive at 78,500. 78.5. I've not gone to the level of the guy doing anything. I've not gone to the guy having a relationship or whatever. So the question is this: if you want to be very realistic, in my own view, just even talking about let's just meet something that the guy will be found reasonable. You can't be talking about anything less than 150. And and I can defend this issue and bring it out to make it clear that if we are talking about a graduate trainee with a future, in addition to him just getting into employment, because these people have high expectation. And then if you are saying, okay, we cannot meet your expectation, let us at least be able to show that we believe in their future. We shouldn't have anything less than 150,000 to be on the right side. That's my view, my personal opinion. As we normally say, as auditors, we express opinion. So this is an opinion expressed by me. It shouldn't be less than 150 for
Thank you
minimum.
very much, sir. No wonder you are given the name Oracle. As auditors, we express opinion, and you have also expressed your opinion on this. Your opinion is well taken, sir, and will be communicated to the right channel. Let me come home to we chartered accountant in my next question, and after which I will go straight to the audience question. Because we also need to survive, and that's the topic for today: surviving the current cost of living crisis. We professionals, for those who are employed and for those who are also employers, are there specific skills that Nigerian professional accountants require in order to equip themselves to be more efficient and effective and therefore survive the current cost of living crisis?
Let me say something again, if you just permit me, just briefly. I will not waste too much of your time. You see, naturally, I can tell you that as a person, giving myself as an example, I work in employment for technically 18 years. That is public sector 9, private sector, accounting firm 9. Then I started doing my own thing in the last 22 years. So you will see my head started from being an employee to being self-employed. And the truth of the matter, it is no longer operating that way in the real world. We should be talking about thinking businesses and talking as investors. So it's time for us to shift our brain set from that self-employment and employment mindset to business management and investment. And in doing this, I can tell you, even if it is as simple as a small shop that somebody can afford, where he can start deploying all the skills acquired as being a chartered accountant. Look at what you have acquired. You have acquired management accounting skill, financial management skill, assurance skill, reporting skills. Then the next question is, how well are these skills being deployed? So that becomes the next issue. So if you ask me in the real sense, we should start thinking about training our people on entrepreneurship and investment. Very important, because without that, your costs cannot stop going up. It will keep going up, and your income will be struggling to catch up with it. And when it does catch up, another round of responsibility comes in. So we should start talking about deliberate development of entrepreneurship skills and investment skills. Very important.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very important, like you have said, and it's a good one there. So let's quickly go to the audience and take a few questions. Fagbola Temi talk we are Deni. Cost of living is skyscraping at alarming rate, while the disposable income is nosediving day in, day out. How can we bridge the gap to stay afloat the drowning rivers of the economic imbalances?
Thank you. I think I mentioned that in the course of passing. That look, the starting point is let's focus on essentials. It is very important. And then you see, whether the cost of living goes up or not, the fact remains that we keep aging. And the truth of the matter, if you ask me what I'm afraid of, I'm not afraid of the cost of living, I'm afraid of the aging factor. Because the aging factor, you just wake up one day. There was a time I was a young man, and as of today, I'm finding myself getting closer to 50 than 50. And you start getting scared. What happened? And this is something that at that point in time, a lot of things are left undone. So it is very important that this issue of you focusing on essential position you for better management of tomorrow's challenges. Now, on the other hand, again, you now talk about what are those things you really need. There's something they normally say in the Yoruba language. It is the inability of the madman to remove his eyes from some things that make the madman to carry a lot of unnecessary burden. That is in the Yoruba language. So you now say that as much as possible, start removing your eyes from certain things that does not have value to your future. That is just the truth of the matter. And then we try to use we pay more attention to our ego than our economics. Economics is a fact. You see, you don't have money, you don't have money. And don't put your head in things that you know you cannot afford to do. Not necessarily because the same people that will be telling you you are a big man, you are whatever, are the people who will laugh at you if you find yourself on the other side, on the receiving side of life. So just focus on essential and then start thinking that tomorrow's challenge, we are still waiting for you. So whether you address today or not, tomorrow's challenge will still come and you still have to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a good response to that question. The next question is coming from our man, OJ Samuel. So, what are the practical steps our professionals should take to enlarge their wealth structure? I think that's similar to the last question I asked you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. The practical steps professionals should take to enlarge their wealth structure. Let's put it in another perspective. And I call it, I use a simple analysis. I call it the 4-3-2-1. And I will make mention of my 4-3-2-1. You see, 40% of your income should be targeted towards what you consider most important in your life. Because like I told you, this is not a how to book, it's a question of you sitting down. Because what is considered my priority today may not be your priority. But if it is something you consider a high priority, pay 40% of your income to that. Then talk about the next 30%. to be used for purpose of you dealing with your immediate challenges. Then 20%, if you ask me, if you can afford that 20%, should be invested in your future. And even in your future, if you know a lot about stock and you know a lot about money market or whatever, if you are afraid of risk, depending on your risk profile, you deal with that. Then 10% should focus on your social responsibility. Without necessarily talking about the religious, if you are the religious type or whatever, you may decide to use that to talk about dealing with your own social responsibility as a person. So give or take, ultimately, because 40% of your income is focused on what you consider very important, very critical to your lifestyle. In future, I'm not talking now because we may end up living longer than necessary. So pay attention to that and start putting your heart into it. If it is about small business, put your heart into it and you realize that you are on the right side. If it's about investing, make it a question of not a gambling type of investment. Don't gamble. If you are buying shares in this thing, you are buying a part of the company. You are not buying in terms of trying to buy and then be waiting for this thing. And don't put your money in MMM. Those are things that borders on you asking for impossible returns. So these are all things we need to face the reality of and start realizing that tomorrow is longer than yesterday. And the fact of the matter is that when you know you're a generational warrior, you are fighting a generational war. And it is not about marathon race, it is about a league. You will finish your own battle and hand over to your children. Don't make them disadvantaged. That is my immediate opinion.
Thank you very much. Samson Ajibade is asking, how much will you recommend to be a minimum wage or a living wage for federal government workers, considering high cost of living we are presently facing? I think you have given your opinion on this, sir.
It should not be less. It should not be less. It can be more. It should not be less than 150,000 per month.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So moving along still with our questions, because still when we are talking about the current cost of living crisis, we have different escape routes people want to take so that they can stay afloat. And considering all we are having, we have some Nigerians taking the escape route of emigration, the jackpot syndrome, as a way to also find their means. What's your position on this?
I think this is about perception. Let me put it that way. Even though it's about perception, it's about the fact that if you ask me the reality of it, if you can go outside of this country and do some not so noble work, if you ask me, why can't you also just face the reality of the circumstances and also come up with creative ways of dealing with this? Now, what stops us from doing it in this Nigerian context? It is our ego. You see, that is just the truth. It is our ego. Our ego is, oh, look, I'm a chartered accountant. And you know what it means. ICANN is a challenging course. Because I remember in our days, the fear of ICANN was the beginning of wisdom. It is a prayer point around 1992. Because they'll be pointing at to people who have started and today they will get one double star, tomorrow all the rest. So that's that level. And so having gone through that, you now ask yourself, why should I? Because the truth of the matter is that, look, the reality of this country requires that I should expand my income and manage my cost. So if I have to do that, let me start something now. Because if you are not focused in Nigeria, what is the possibility of you to become focused outside? That is a remote logic. Now, coming back to this issue, for those who are young, if you ask me, for those who are young, maybe getting out of the country can help their cause in order for them to start building their life effectively. But for those who find themselves right in the middle age level and not the rest, you can still come about doing something because we are all focused so much on the public sector. We are failing to realize that there are opportunities for those of us who are chartered accountants in the private sector. ICANN originally consummated the way I see it is even meant for you to survive in the private sector.
Thank you very much, sir. My next question, it is also believed that in many quarters, that many multinational corporations are still exiting the country due to the harsh operating climate, and the diaspora remittances are shrinking by the day. Many citizens believe that the Nigerian economy is clearly off the track of prosperity or recovery, if I could say it that way. Do you agree with this position? If yes, why? If no, why? What's your thought on this, sir?
I may not agree with this position, and I will use a simple analytical review. You know, going from here to maybe Lagos Ibadan, just this Lagos Ibadan expressway, you look to your right, you look to your left. All those things you are looking at opportunities. That's number one. Number two, when you now talk about a future in this country, and you look at the population, the people who knows how to solve problem, all we are talking about is solving problem, is that there are people who are able to read the fact that population needs certain things and they are positioning it. Now, the country we are trying to give up on, somebody once said that there was a time it was coming into this country and the people who are inside the airplane were more of foreigners. So foreigners are seeing things where we cannot see. And the simple distance of acres of diamond means that right here in this country we consider is bereft of opportunity. Foreigners are seeing the opportunities. So what are we doing? It's like we are thinking that the grass is always greener at the other side. But the question is this: be ready to fold your jacket, fold your distance, and get to work here and start putting all the skills we acquired in the course of we becoming chartered accountants to work and see how far it goes. Now, there are some issues that we say that, look, the government of Nigeria as of today is public sector led. I don't doubt it. You are right. It may end up becoming a situation where people can go into there and tomorrow they are billionaires, they are millionaires. Fine. That is from the perspective of one angle. But if your goal is as much as possible to take care of your family, to be able to be there for your family and position them for the challenges of tomorrow, you can do it even without having a public sector background. You can do it. I can tell you. If you are very good at how to manage businesses, by the time you open one shop on one street and you manage it effectively, you grow. And then you're able to open the second one and you're able to synergize both entity together. Then you realize that what are we talking about? You may not be able to make the type of money that you make by virtue of some other unholy activities, but you are making enough to keep you focused on the next generation.
Thank you very much. Assuming the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, invites you today to briefly speak to his economic team on practical steps that should be taken to cushion the current cost of living crisis. Please tell our global viewers some of the points you would raise with his economic team.
Thank you very much. The first thing I have to talk about is job creation and collaboration. I use the word job creation and collaboration because the truth of the matter is that who says we cannot discuss? I've been listening to some foreign news. They can even talk about bringing in an apple. If we love apple so much and you have the balance of trade, understanding between us and America relating to some of these things, start looking, what is that thing we are spending money on? That is the first thing we should ask. Because you see, when we're having this issue of Nigerian custom, it's supposed to be giving us data. And the data is meant to be used to actually assess what exactly is the balance of trade between us and China. What can you bring from China? What do we like so much in Nigeria that we can bring from China and ask them to come and establish there and monitor that from the regulatory perspective to be in the interest of our people? That's number one. The issue of food security is something we should take seriously. And in the country as we have it today, there are some things that are peculiar to the north, peculiar to the other region. Let's start talking about making sure it is secured, because the insecurity is actually affecting us too from the inflation perspective. Then you now talk about the next one, the issue of social safety net. Social safety net. You tell people to retire at the age of 60, that is if they get lucky to be retired at that age. And then you want them to live long, because gone are those days when people retire and the next thing you are waiting for is the date when they are going to die. Now people can live longer in terms of can live at least a little bit longer even after retirement. So who says that at the age of 60 you are useless? I don't want to believe that, because at that age you can still talk about this thing. So let's start talking about social safety net for those who couldn't do anything much, and then have that. Then finally, I need to talk about the issue of inflation. Inflation is something that makes nonsense of every one of us. It should be tackled head on. We should actually focus on that, because the truth of the matter is that I mentioned something. I said what I was earning in 2002 is even more than what I'm earning in 2024. It doesn't make sense. There's no way you can explain that to anybody, because when I put it in dollarized terms, it is clear that what I was earning in 2002, I have a bigger dollar value than what I'm earning in naira now in this current year. These are all issues that we must tackle, and it is not for individuals to tackle that. It is for the government to be deliberate and focus on what will affect their citizens badly. That is 4 things that I put on my slide.
Wow, that's a loaded one. That's a loaded one. I do not expect less once again. And in closing, because of our time, ICANN is always open to ideas that will positively advance the growth of our members, the accountancy profession, and the global business environment. Please, what is your suggestion to ICANN on continuously filling of knowledge gaps to further build the capacity and create global opportunities for our members?
Let me say something, and I'm saying it with all sense of responsibility. I can, as of today, and the little I've been following on social media, is actually moving in the right direction. I've been seeing a lot of things happening, and I've been seeing the fact that the brand perception of ICANN is getting better by the day. That is not in doubt. That is the truth. And in order to see, you see, a good thing is not just talking about beating yesterday's performance. You should aim for greatness. And in order to move beyond the great good things that ICANN is doing today, I want us to actually realize that, look, the aspect of research and thought leadership is very important. If you are talking about ICANN as of today, ICANN should be the one directing the area where the institute is focusing on. We should talk about more emphasis on research, and we should be the thought leader in a lot of areas. That's one. Then another thing is the mentoring and networking opportunities. We should equally find a way. We can rejig or find a way of looking at it so that, you see, there is an apprenticeship scheme in the eastern part of Nigeria. It is meant to actually prepare the apprentice to make sure that the learning cost is minimal. And that is very important, because I can say that I benefited from that because I trained with Deloitte. And that is just the truth of the matter. So let us focus now on the mentoring and networking opportunities in order to make sure that you get in touch with the right set of people in order to push that forward. And finally, there should be need for emphasis on technology and innovation initiatives. We are already doing that, but we can do better. That is just my emphasis there. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Additional Adedayo, the chairman of AIA Regional Services and the IPP of CITN. It's been a good one on the show today. I want to say thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your wealth of experience and knowledge with our members and friends of the Institute. Thank you so much for coming, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And we pray that when next we also call on you, we'll have you on board just like you have come today. Thank you so much for coming once again.
It's a profession I will always respect. Thank you so much. I will be available.
Thank you very much, sir. So let me quickly take the announcement for the few minutes I have before my time expires on the show. ICANN Annual Dinner and Awards Program. The date is 4th May 2024. Please make it a day and ensure you get your card to attend the program. Nominations is open for Young Accountants Award for 2024. These have not happened before. Now, nominations, privilege has been given to Young Accountants to be nominated for the annual dinner and awards ceremony for this year. Please go ahead and nominate the young accountant who is doing well, who is not more than 40 years, as at May 2024. Application for fellowship conferment for 2024 ends on April 29, 2024. So you have 18 more days to go. The date for the fellowship conferment is Saturday, May 18, 2024. The venue is Arbor Point Event Center at Wilmot Road off Amadou Bello Way, Victoria Island, Lagos. The time is 11 a.m. and the fee is 125,000 naira. Ensure you go and apply today. It ends on April 29th. Also, and similarly, we have the ICT conference coming up on digital economy, navigating the new frontiers. It's the virtual program on April 29, 2024. Time is 10 a.m. and the fee is 10,000. Similarly, we have the public finance management webinar. Also, the team is building economic resilience, tackling debt, AI innovations, governance cost on April 19, 2024. Go ahead and register. It is very important you do so. Also, we have the forthcoming induction of associate members. Induction of associate members. For those who are yet to know about that, please go ahead and check the institute website for the necessary information, as we have limited time for you to register and be part of the forthcoming associate induction program. Wow. And that is the program for today. You know, it's been a special edition, a special episode for the Eid, and to also celebrate, of course, and commemorate the Eid Mubarak with all our Muslim faithfuls. It's been a wonderful session on the show today. I want to thank you for being part of this show. Till I come your way again with another guest, another topical issue, I will tell you to stay safe and sound. And on behalf of the producers of this program, I remain Tosin Akinwumi, FCA, saying thank you for watching and bye for now.